just in, you are looking at obviously a very disturbing live shot there. That is the World Trade Center, and we have unconfirmed reports this morning that a plane has crashed into one of the towers of the World Trade Center. CNN Twitter right now is just beginning.
Oh, there's another one. Another plane just hit. Right? Oh my God! Another plane.
Blowing right now. You got people running up the street.
And there is smoke pouring out of the Pentagon. It would appear that there...
People are jumping out the windows. Over there, they're jumping out the windows. Like...
The firemen assembled here, the police officers, FBI agents, and you can see the two towers. A huge explosion now, raining debris on all of us.
Another plane has crashed, this one about 80 miles south of Pittsburgh.
The second building that was hit by the plane has just completely collapsed. The entire building has just collapsed. It folded down on itself, and it's not there anymore.
Just landing only a few minutes ago at Andrews Air Force Base, returning to the White House, getting ready to address the nation around 9 p.m.
Never imagined was going to occur on his watch was to test his leadership qualities.
Good evening. Today, our fellow citizens, our way of life, our very freedom came under attack. Immediately following the first attack, I implemented our government's emergency response plans. I've directed the full resources of our intelligence and law enforcement communities to find those responsible and to bring them to justice. We will make no distinction between the terrorists who committed these acts and those who harbor them. Thank you. Good night, and God bless America.
My name is Lori Van Auken. My husband, Kenneth Van Auken, was killed on September 11th at the World Trade Center. He was on the 105th floor of the North Tower, which was the first building that was hit and the second building to collapse.
My name is Patricia Casaza. I lost my husband, John Casaza. He worked for Cantor Fitzgerald on the 104th floor of the first tower.
My name is Mindy Kleinberg, and I lost my husband, Alan. He worked for Cantor Fitzgerald on the 104th floor of the North Tower.
I got a message from him on the morning of September 11th saying that, I love you, I'm in the World Trade Center, the building was hit by something, I don't know if I'm going to get out, but I love you very much and I hope I see you later, bye. And I didn't make it to the phone on time to speak with him. I tried calling him back, and I was never able to reach him, so I never spoke to him again.
I was actually doing laundry when I got a call from my husband. And he had thought that a bomb had gone off in his building. And by the time he had called me, he had checked all those avenues and said that you know, the floor is already filling up with a thick black smoke, and I don't think we're going to make it. He said, you know, I love you, tell John that I love him, our son.
On September 11th, 2001, 2,972 people from more than 80 countries were killed, leaving thousands of loved ones behind. While grieving continued for many, some began to move beyond their personal pain.
My husband's service was in October, and then I think I went into angry mode, and that's when I started to question everything.
I spent a lot of time on the computer. I started reading every single article that I could get my hands on.
I mean, there was no sleeping at the beginning because We were grieving, it was hard to lay down, so I would spend all night just researching.
I want to meet with the NSA, CIA, and the FBI together in one room.
Out of the many who were researching on their own, 4 widowed mothers found each other. New Jersey residents Mindy Kleinberg, Patty Casaza, Lori Van Auken, along with Kristen Breitweiser, became known as the Jersey Girls.
We became friends and like-minded. We all had questions. We all had questions, and we wanted answers.
At the top of the family's growing list of questions, why had the U.S. military defenses failed to stop any of the 4 hijacked planes?
The FAA alerted U.S. air defense units of a possible hijacking at 8:38 Tuesday morning.
The last plane was reported to have crashed in Pennsylvania just after 10 a.m.
That's almost 2 hours, you know, where planes were flying around the skies of the United States with no military response.
Coming across an article in a Canadian paper, the Jersey widows learned it had been a routine for NORAD, the military apparatus in charge of air defense, to scramble fighters to intercept planes during suspected emergencies.
Fatal accident involving a Learjet flying across
the women recalled one such incident that was heavily reported in 1999.
Just 25 minutes into the flight, controllers lost radio contact with the pilot, and an Air Force F-16 on a training mission was sent to take a look. Ultimately, 6 military jets gave chase. The plane was tracked by the FAA on radar. At high levels, the military, even the White House, discussed what to do.
Tell me what the difference was between those times and the day of September 11th.
They wondered about the lack of immediate response by the president and his Secret Service detail. President Bush was in a Florida elementary school classroom that morning, where he sat for more than 7 minutes after being informed of the second attack.
The Secret Service has an arrangement with the FAA. They had open lines after the World Trade Center. Tracking it by radar. And under these circumstances, they just move. They don't say, sir, or ask politely. They came in and said, sir, we have to leave immediately, and grabbed me and literally grabbed you and moved you. Yeah.
Immediately following the first attack, I implemented our government's emergency response plans.
If people fell down on the jobs by not informing those who were in leadership positions, who had the power to do something, why were we not looking at what our protocols were there so that we could fix it going forward?
Our families didn't want us asking these questions. That was painful. We should, just be grieving and healing. Well, part of our healing process is finding out exactly what happened.
We really were looking for answers feverishly at the beginning, and there was very little information being put out through the major media that answered our questions. There were just more questions. Every time we would look into something, we'd have more questions.
One article led to a question that begat another question that begat another question, and when you couldn't thread them together and you couldn't come to an answer that made sense, we started to catalog our questions.
The families raised questions about the track record of the FBI and the elusive search for justice after 9/11.
I've directed the full resources of our intelligence and law enforcement communities to find those responsible and to bring them to justice.
Throughout the week after the attack, there were numerous accounts that the hijackers had a large number of accomplices in the United States.
75 individuals who are currently detained, over 480 people arrested, nearly 1,000 individuals.
The families waited for the 9/11 trials to begin, but they never came. After the public spectacle of roundups, the Justice Department quietly let the suspects go, one by one. A year later, the families would learn that only 6 of the original detainees were still in custody, and none had been charged with any terrorist act.
The FBI continuously was changing agents who were on the investigation. When you're trying to connect the dots, you need continuity.
Journalist Gail Sheehy spent months with the 4 widows.
They wanted to find that more was done and was going to be done, but they kept finding that less was being done.
We printed articles, copied them.
By November, it had become the sense among most 9/11 families that an independent investigation would be necessary to do what the Justice Department and the news media seemed unwilling to do.
We felt that the country was at risk from terrorists and from incompetence, and maybe worse.
They'd get a little outside Washington, they'd stop at a red light, and they began wriggling out of their capri pants and putting on their nice little skirts and suits so they could go around all the offices of Congress, bedevil these members of Congress and say, what are you doing about this?
Soon, a 9/11 Commission bill was being sponsored in Congress.
Senator Tom Daschle said last week that you called him several times and urged him not to investigate the events of September 11th. Tom's wrong. He has, I think, in this case, well, let's say a misinterpretation.
He said on one occasion that the president asked him to do that at a breakfast meeting. Are you now saying that they weren't asking to block an investigation?
Lori was an independent. Mindy was definitely a Democrat. Actually, Kristen and myself voted for President Bush in the first election. And yet, even though he should have been our biggest advocate, he turned into one of our biggest adversaries.
We still don't know what happened in those buildings.
The Jersey widows were not the only ones seeking answers and becoming frustrated. In New York, Sally Reagan-Hard, who had lost her firefighter son Christian in the building's collapse, was forming the Skyscraper Safety Campaign.
The 911 emergency tapes and recordings, plus 500 interviews done with the fire department right after 9/11. All that material has been withheld from the public.
Sally partnered with widow Monica Gabrielle, who lost her husband Richard at the World Trade Center.
Why did the buildings fall? How could skyscrapers just like crumble to the ground in 10 seconds?
Never before or since had fire caused a steel frame building to collapse. World Trade Center Building Number 7, never hit by an airplane, also collapsed that evening.
Building 7 ablaze at the moment and apparently getting ready to collapse.
The largest structural collapse in world history, the largest loss of life on American soil since the Civil War, and not one governmental or elected official wanted to know why and how this happened.